when we first met, we talked about our daughters, and they're such a source of constant inspiration, a reminder of the possibilities and the opportunity
Yeah.
to that you should grab, no matter how old you are, no matter where you are in your
Right.
life. And I'm so
Yeah.
fortunate to have children in my life who are able to inspire me and reflect that.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
I know your children helped inspire you to
Mm-hmm.
push forward, and you've got one who's a business person, but you are intensely involved in your own business, 6 Degrees
I
HR
am.
Consulting. Tell us about that business and what does it mean? How does it work? What do you do?
Yes, thank you. And 6 degrees, that's what connects us globally. So it was a really important uh, to name it something that it was really the essence of the company. So I provide HR, outsourced HR for small to medium sized businesses. And our community that I live in, Santa Clarita, California, is really fertile soil for businesses, especially family owned businesses. So all those things connect to me. I'm a family owned business, a small business, and I'm a business that really helps support businesses' existence when it comes to the people in
Mm.
terms of HR. That's really the human capital is the most expensive, the most vulnerable, and obviously the one that needs to be cultivated and supported by a specialist. So that's what I do. I'm a specialist in HR. I'm nationally certified. I have companies all over the country and in Bordeaux, France, and I had the great pleasure of going to Bordeaux last year with Madison,
Oh
and
la
it's
la!
a champagne company. Exactly, it's like not a
No.
bad gig if you can get it right. So it really translates to a lot of industries. So I get to meet, like you and your travels, different people, different spaces and industries, and it just truly enriches my life. I think when we met, we talked about not just our kids, but just the love of people. And this, industry, humans first in HR, gives me that. It feeds my soul. So it doesn't ever feel like work. It feels
Wow.
like I'm going to see my friends who have a business and they need my help. And that's how it grew for me. And it's really all connected to my purpose. And so when you put those things together, and I have people that follow me just like you, they go, do you ever not work? I'm like, I'm always around people, and these people become part of my life, from uh, business owners that become true friends and supporters of my goals and of my girls. And it's just a great combination of who I already am, just translated into my purpose.
You really, I think taking all your identities and pulling them together and using them in an
Yeah.
organic way. We do it in house, but I could certainly see how someone who is really focused on trying to provide a product or a service wants to focus on that and not to have to deal with the minutia,
Outsource it.
important
Hmm.
minutia of human
Very much
resources.
so.
And is that what you do? You kind of come in and be
Absolutely.
that arm in the firm within the company?
I'm really the long spoon between you, the business owner, and those things. Because sometimes also, and this really is something I say at the onset, sometimes you're too close. You need a neutral person. You're almost, you can't see the forest through the trees kind of thing. And because of the dynamics of small businesses that's often family, you don't want someone to imply that you are too close and that you have bias or favoritism or nepotism. So when a business owner calls me, they're making sure that that's off the table, that that's not, besides all the other things that they need with someone that does what I do. They will also want to just really make sure they put some distance between any tough decision, any compliance issue, give it to the specialist. We get to that sweet spot where, like me, I'm going to give this to my accountant because they're going to do my books, because that's not my lane. And so it's the same with business owners who really work above board in terms of engaging someone that is a specialist. Like, not only do I not want to do it, but I want to make sure that the person I give it to is good at it and that's their specialty and their scope. It speaks volumes to an employee when they've engaged someone on their behalf to make sure they're doing things right. That's really when we introduce what I do and who I am to the company. that's how the buy-in happens, because they're saying we're thoughtful enough to know that this isn't an area that we want to get wrong, because you're the most important element of our company.
That's excellent because I'm sure the employees respect that as
Yes.
acknowledgement of the importance of HR because it's
Yes.
easy enough to ignore it or
Yes.
to not do
Google
it
guessed it.
right and get
Yeah.
fined.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
okay,
and then someone's on the other end of that, and that is the employee. And so we're dealing with clients that are thoughtful in that regard. And then, of course, not everyone can do the people part, right? There's things that you could do technically, right? We're all past certain things. You pass the bar, pass the PHR. We can do those things with our eyes closed, but not everybody can do the people part. And that's really signature to me, signature to my brand. And I really um, at that point, with all the things we talked about, I have agency
right.
in my life, and that translates in my work, in the passion that I have for small businesses.
Well, you're people driven. The long term uh,
Hmm.
is is really the arc of history. That's what this show is
Yes.
about. It's about trying to look at the ways that those who came before us helped to provide us with suggestions and ideas and ways to move forward in a way that's positive. And your life really is an example of trying to bend the arc of history towards justice. But before I go, I always
Mm.
ask my guests if they either have something that they in particular are doing to try to bend the arc of history towards justice or some way that they'd like to suggest that others might be able to try to activate themselves and have agency on that front. What would you say if I were
Yeah.
going to ask you about bending the arc of history towards justice?
That you need to be mindful that you're on the shoulders of people, right? My grandpa used to say all the time, this road was dirt when I walked on it and I paved it for you. Your job is to put lights on it for your girls and give them direction and recognize that um, that is that is the way to honor the legacy of our family. And so I think if people always have that front of mind, and this is why we were so connected immediately, is because of that legacy that you had found and fought for and had really brought forward for people to really understand how important it is. It resonated with me because I'm always thinking in that way, that it it may not make sense right now to you, but ultimately when I'm gone and you're talking to my grandkids or my grandkids, that my life was meaningful for you and for others. And I take great pride in that, in everything that I'm doing, and I'm very intentional about that, so that that's represented in the way that honored my grandfather, my father, my grandmother. And so it's important. This is why we have those pictures behind us, right? Because they're always around us. I'm looking at yours. Dr. Thomas is here, who is a huge influence for
Tell me
me.
a little
So
bit about him. I know we were going
yeah,
to go already, but I know you mentioned that
yeah,
he's a huge influence on you. And
huge.
tell me about tell me about who that man
Yeah, huge trailblazer. He went to the Philippines at 19 as an Air Force man as a way to avoid going to the front lines of Vietnam. Met and married my mother there. Filipino woman in this GI bar, saw her and was just completely enamored. And it really was his fearlessness that it stays with me. He rode the bus for 6 months to learn how to speak Tagalog to her, because he was like, I have one shot, and if I blow it, right, and I could tell she doesn't understand the language, so I need to, and watched her until he could really articulate who he was to her. That was powerful, and it stays with me. And it's his story of how we came into the world, but it was because of his fearlessness, and that is always been something that I remain steadfast about. And so he ultimately became an air traffic controller, went on strike in 1980, became an educator with the GI Bill, was a principal, and retired as superintendent. So his whole mindset was never be afraid of evolving, be fearless about it, and and own the experiences in a way that serve you and serve others.
Wow, Dr. Gene Thomas,
Yeah,
that's your dad. So
Dr. Gene Thomas.
um,
Yeah,
hats off to him
thank
and to
you.
the inspiration that he provided you, that you are
Yeah,
then sharing with your children and those who aren't your direct children, but who see
yeah,
by your example opportunities to grow and be the best person you can be.
yeah. Yeah.
It's
Thank
been
you
great
so much.
talking to you.
Go so fast always, and I thank you so much.
Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we
Thank
look forward to
you.
seeing you sometime this summer. And best of luck
Yes.
with your next outing. We'll all be following and rooting for you.
Thank you so much. Mwah. Blessings
Take
to
care.
you guys.
Best to
Have a
you.
good one.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to an